welcome back to MidSynapse podcast series, where we bring you deep insights from top medical experts shaping the future of healthcare. Today, we are diving into a field that is as challenging as it is rewarding: pediatric hemato-oncology and bone marrow transplantation. Managing blood cancers and hematologic disorders in children requires not just medical expertise but also an immense amount of compassion, precision, and innovation. And who better to guide us through this than Dr. Manasa Kakunje, a distinguished pediatric hematology oncologist and bone marrow transplant specialist. She is currently associated with Dr. Bhubneshwar Burao Cancer Institute and brings a decade of experience in tackling some of the most complex pediatric oncology cases in India. So, Dr. Manasa, it is a pleasure to have you with us and welcome to the series.
Thank you. Thank you, MedSynapse, for the opportunity.
So now, Doctor, let's start with your journey, like in pediatric hemato-oncology and bone marrow transplant. It is you are a highly specialist in, and it is a demanding field as well. So, what inspired you to pursue this path?
So it was exactly during my MBBS that I was drawn towards pediatrics as a specialty because working with children during our internship, we get a chance to work in all the subjects, all the fields. So that's when I realized that working in pediatrics, I always enjoyed. And at the end of the day, however hectic it used to be, it used to give a satisfaction working for the children. So that is how I was, by the end of my MBBS, I was sure that I was going to take up pediatrics. So I had taken up pediatrics as a specialty for my post-graduation. So during my post-graduation in KM Pune, I was exposed to a wide variety of pediatric benign as well as oncology. All the cases I was exposed to. So the hematology as well as other benign as well as oncological hematological cases as well as the immunology cases. So when I was exposed to all these cases, I was fascinated by how how the diseases, like how they can be managed, as well as like the blood and the immune system in the body. So how these can be managed with like chemotherapy and all the newer techniques like bone marrow transplant. It completely changes the one patient's blood and immune system. So I was fascinated by that, and I was also encouraged by the hematologist there, Dr. Kannan sir. So I took up so I wanted to go further in the do further studies in the hematology. And also at that time the pediatric oncology as a subspecialty was not very well established. So not many pediatric hemato-oncologists were there during that time. So that's why I wanted to take up that and do my further studies in that. And I joined a pediatric hemato-oncology fellowship at St. John's in Bangalore. There, Dr. Anand Prakash sir, Dr. Vandana ma'am, they all helped me throughout the journey. 2-year fellowship I had done there. So during that time, I was exposed to pediatric hematology and oncology, both the benign as well as oncology cases, and also the bone marrow transplant. I was exposed to bone marrow transplant in pediatrics in St. John's. So after my 2 years fellowship, I was further interested in pursuing the bone marrow transplant. I wanted to gain experience and training further in that. So I got the opportunity to do a fellowship at BJ Wadia Hospital for Children, exclusively children's hospital in Mumbai. So there I had the opportunity to train under Dr. Prashant Thivakar sir and Dr. Amrin ma'am. So there for 1 year, I got the opportunity to train as a pediatric hemato-oncology and BMT specifically pediatric BMT. So I got the exposure to all kinds of pediatric BMT there. And after completing my fellowship, I got the opportunity to work in Dr. B. Barua Cancer Institute in Guwahati. So for past 2 years, I've been working there as an assistant professor. There I've been very lucky to have the guidance of Dr. Girish Srinaswamy sir and Dr. Munlima Hazarika ma'am, who's been HOD there. She's been practicing pediatric oncology there for past 17 years. So I have been like very lucky looking at them. They are an inspiration, a true inspiration. So I have been really lucky to get such people throughout my journey. So
Yeah, that's really incredible to hear your entire journey, and it has
yes.
actually spanned over so much. So it's really incredible. So now, over the years, we have seen that genetic and molecular diagnostic revolutionize pediatric oncology. So how have these advancements changed the way we diagnose and plan treatment for young patients?
So a few years back, the diagnosis was mainly based on morphology and cytochemistry. So, but now advancements like PCR, FISH, and other NGS molecular techniques, which help us in diagnosis as well as management. So, not just in diagnosis nowadays. Based on the risk stratification as well as therapy response, how we see the therapy response, also the molecular targets help in seeing how the patient responds to the management, as well as there are targetable mutations. So once we identify what mutations and what uh, oncogenes are involved, they can be targeted by whatever available targeted therapy, so that you can modify the treatment. You can tailor the therapy to the patient. So as well as the risk stratification, like for example, in the commonest hematological malignancy in pediatrics is ALL. So in leukemia, so the response assessment is highly dependent on molecular. The diagnosis is also highly dependent, as well as the response assessment, which is measurable response the measurable residual disease at the end of at the in between the therapy. It is being monitored by PCR or flow cytometry, all that methods, which help in tailoring the therapy highly, because pediatric oncology, it's a branch where the survivorship is has increased. So that is why we need to tailor the therapy to. We need not give intensive therapy to all patients. So we tailor therapy and find out the higher risk patients who need the more intense treatment, and de-escalate therapy for patients who do not need that intense treatment based on the biology of the disease. So we can tailor the therapy to each patient based on what biology they have. So MRD is one important thing where we see the response, as well as it can be NGS based also. So the NGS based therapy also has NGS based response assessment also is also coming up, and is being used currently. And when we speak about AML also, even the risk stratification in AML itself depends on the molecular genetics of the tumor, of the malignancy. In AML, the risk stratification itself is based on the mutations identified. So that is how it has been involved, and also more research needs to be done to see how we can use the targeted therapy, because currently we do not know when to stop them and what can be how long the remission can be with this targeted therapy. So more research needs to be done to use it more effectively. So that's fair.
Yeah. So that is actually also a game changer. But one more question is that molecular profiling has significantly improved survival rates, undoubtedly. But are there any limitations to its accessibility, especially?
Yeah, limitations to accessibility is mainly the cost. cost
Correct.
limitations are there. Other than cost limitations and the accessibility, one thing we already discussed is we do not know when to stop them and how long remission can be achieved with these agents, because long-term data is not yet available for some most of the molecules. Some there are some studies for some of them, but for most of the agents, we do not know the long-term remission status, plus the long-term toxicities, as well as immediate toxicities are also there, though they are much less compared to chemotherapy. But there are immediate toxicities also to many of them, like cytokine release or cytokine release syndrome and all. But then they are much less compared to chemotherapy. Yeah, but accessibility is an issue, though some of them, some of the institutes in India, they are getting through compassionate basis some of the molecules, and on, yeah, that is,
I think over the years it can also change and advancement
yeah,
will come in
yes,
these things. So, Doctor,
yes.
earlier you mentioned about personalized treatments. So, targeted therapies and immunotherapies have been groundbreaking in adult oncology. So, how has their role evolved in pediatric hematologic malignancies?
Yeah, compared to adults, I would say targeted therapy is not yet as well established as in adults in pediatrics. But even then, over the past few years, there are like a lot many targeted therapies have been used in pediatric oncology, like in very common targeted therapies like tyrosine kinase inhibitors have long been used in pediatric environment. And newer target agents also, like FLT3 inhibitors have been used, and
Mm.
in AML gemtuzumab CD19 CD22 targets are available, and also CAR-T is the is coming up in a very nice way, where the patient's immune, the T cells are engineered to fight against the cancer cells. So that is also coming up very nicely in pediatric oncology as well.
Yeah, I think that is fascinating to hear. Now, again, Doctor, bone marrow transplants can be life-saving, but they also come with some significant challenges. So, one of the most critical challenges that I could think of upon was graft versus host diseases. So, how do you manage this in pediatric patients?
Graft-versus-host disease is a common side complication of transplant, especially in haploidentical transplants.
Mm-hmm.
More so in haploidentical, and a little less in matched unrelated or in unrelated donor transplant, and still further less in matched sibling or matched family donor transplants. So in graft-versus-host disease, it's always a very fine balance of immunotherapy, the immune. In GVHD, the it's more very common in haploidentical transplants, and a little less in matched unrelated donor transplants, and still the risk is a little further less in matched family donor transplants. So in haploidentical, it's always a balance where you need to balance the immunosuppression, the graft rejection versus graft versus host disease is always it is difficult to balance them. And also, there is a vicious cycle when you treat the GVHD with immunosuppression. Like you go up on the immunosuppression to treat the GVHD. So that time you have the risk of viral reactivations. So, and also graft rejection. So it's always a very fine balance, because once there is GVHD, there is a viral reactivation, and our immune response to the the body's immune response to the viral reactivation again triggers and aggravates the GVHD. So there is a vicious cycle, and it is very difficult to get out of this vicious cycle in a GVHD. So post transplant, so it's a very fine balance that needs to be that will have to be tailored for that particular patients. So it's very it's better
And
try and avoid that GVHT, which is very much very difficult. But T cell monitoring during the graft infusion, T cell capping the T cells before the graft infusion, and also in haploidentical the T cell depletion, T cell depletion before the infusion. The graft manipulation becomes important because there is always the question of cost there, but then the cost of GVHD post transplant is, I think, balanced once you do the TCR alpha beta depletion, as striking a balance between the GVHD and the graft rejection and the viral reactivation. So it is difficult in that balance. Like when we treat the GVHD, the viral reactivation happens, and then there is a risk of graft rejection. So there is a close. We monitor the patient closely once, and monitor the therapy, like tailor the therapy to that particular patient, monitoring the patient closely.
that is actually a delicate balance, I would say, doctor. And it depends that sometimes it happens that you cannot just avoid it as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, doctor, pediatric cancer survivors face long-term challenges from secondary malignancies to growth delays and also neurocognitive effects. So how do you address these issues
Yeah.
to ensure a better quality of life post-treatment?
So, as pediatric survivorship issues arises because pediatric malignancies are mostly curable.
Right.
So there are long-term survivors. So we begin addressing them by trying and preventing them. So first thing is trying to and preventing these long-term issues or minimizing the side effects, long-term effects. And the secondary thing comes monitoring for them in the survivors and addressing those issues. So preventing mainly comes from tailoring the therapy, de-intensification of the de-escalation of therapy, adjusting the doses of the drugs, reduction of trying and avoiding radiation when the outcomes are similar with other agents like chemotherapy or immune therapy, and capping the or keeping a cap on the chemotherapeutic agents, regular monitoring for hearing and cardiac effects, and also growth monitoring during therapy as well, so that we don't compromise treatment, and also in the meanwhile reduce the side effects and possibly prevent them. So if and despite all that, when they do occur, some are unavoidable. So we have survivorship programs. So I would it's like when we speak about survivorship, it's like important to speak about Indian Cancer Society. They help in establishing these survivorship programs in different hospitals. So even in Dr. B. Barwa, the ICS has provided support in establishing a survivorship program. So Dr. Vandana Dhamankar has been and Dr. Purna Kokure ma'am. So all of them have been very instrumental in helping different institutes establish these survivorship programs. It's a team of they provide with the psychologist support. So we have a team of clinical psychologists and also the clinical team working together along with pediatric endocrinologist, monitoring for the growth delay and other hormonal disturbances, hearing loss, other psychological issues, and also help in rehabilitation of these patients in the long term. So the
Yes, I think
Indian
that's
Cancer
very,
Societies has been very instrumental in that.
and I think that's such an important aspect also because long term and later on post treatment also it matters a lot, and especially for young children, the quality of life matters a lot.
the psychologist also plays an important role in that, because the family issue, there are also social and family issues, because it's a long, the treatment is for long term. It
Very
like
long.
the leukemia, which is the common malignancy, the treatment is for 3 years. So it's not
Hmm.
just the patient who comes to the hospital; the whole family has to go through the treatment.
Yeah.
So they need a very robust social support, along with social and psychological support, along with the other, like other things like funds
Other
and
things.
treatment support.
Yeah, I think that
Mm.
psychological is so much important. That support is really important during this tough phase of life. So, doctor, there are still
Yeah.
many misconceptions surrounding pediatric or hemato or oncology. So, what are some of the most common ones you like to clarify for healthcare professionals?
Usually, like when you talk about pediatric oncology, people say, "Oh, how to treat? You need to give chemotherapy to such a young patient, such a
Mhm.
small child. How will they tolerate? How will they come out of it? How?" But the thing is, biology of the tumors in this age is much different from that in adults. So, when it comes to pediatric oncology, usually the biology of the tumor is much better than the cancer or oncology in adults. And also, the tolerance to chemo is much better in these young children than in adults. Um, so, whenever early detection and early referral is very important, because usually it's the delay in referral and mismanagement that complicates the therapy, complicates the treatment. For example, in ALL, acute leukemia, which is the commonest malignancy, usually they get steroids before coming to the hospital, coming to the
Oh,
oncology center. So, getting steroids first delays the treatment, delays the diagnosis, as well as directly makes them a high risk, because they have been exposed to steroids, and they develop resist they begin as steroid resistant tumors. So getting establishing a diagnosis itself becomes very difficult in them, and once
oh.
established, treating them also is a challenge, because they are already steroid resistant. So it's not just in hemato-oncology. There are other oncological cases also which get mismanaged and mistreated, and the establishing diagnosis and treatment delay is there in many of the tumors and oncological cases. And also in whereas in benign hematology also, like in aplastic anemia, it's a very transplant is very curable. For aplastic anemia, the outcomes are very good post transplant, but then early referral and um, early referral to proper units is very important, because multiple transfusions and all complicates the case. So uh, that is what I would like to convey, that early referral and timely discussion with the hemato-oncologist would be life-saving in many of the cases.
Yeah, actually, that is actually an eye-opening. I think education and awareness is also very important when it comes to all
Yeah.
of this and clearing the misconceptions, correctly mentioned by you. So, Doctor, as we wrap up today's session, I would like to thank you for sharing your expertise and insights on this crucial topic. And this has been an insightful conversation. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
I would also like to thank MedSynapse for the opportunity, and also I would like to acknowledge everyone who has been a part of my journey, who has been guiding and helping me through this journey, and also all my colleagues and also my juniors who have been helping me along my journey. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for taking some time out from your busy and hectic schedules for us today. Thank you so much. And I'm sure our listeners, whether they are doctors, researchers, or caregivers, have gained a lot from this discussion. And remember, if you're a healthcare professional who is eager to delve deeper into medical topics or have questions, do not hesitate to join us on the Medicine Apps platform. Medicine Apps platform is not just a resource. It's a dynamic space where you can connect with your medical peers, participate in meaningful discussions, and contribute to the ongoing evolution of healthcare. So until next time, stay curious and keep making an impact.